Imagine the impossible. Life is often measured in probabilities and luck. The odds of winning a major lottery are 1 in millions. The odds of being struck by lightning in your lifetime are even slimmer. We tend to believe that tragedy is a rare visitor, something that strikes once and then moves on. But there are stories so improbable that they defy the very laws of logic. Stories that force us to question the limits of human luck, fate, and the sheer resilience of the soul. What if the world ended twice for you? What if you stood at the epicenter of the most destructive event in human history, survived, and then, only 3 days later, experienced it all over again? Most people would call this a nightmare beyond imagination. For one man, it was his reality. In August 1945, the world witnessed the power of the sun unleashed upon the earth. It was the birth of the atomic age, a moment that fundamentally changed the course of human history. But in the midst of this global firestorm, there was an individual journey that stands alone. This is the story of Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He did not just witness the end of the world, he lived through it twice and refused to be broken by it. This is the journey of a man who defied the laws of probability and death, becoming the only person officially recognized to have survived 2 atomic bombs. His life is a testament to the fact that while we cannot control the chaos of the world, we can control how we stand within it. This is a defiant soul.
It was August 6, 1945. To the rest of the world, this date would be etched in history. But to Tsutomu Yamaguchi, it began as a mundane Monday morning in Hiroshima. The humidity was already thick, sticking to his clothes as he walked through the city. Yamaguchi was a 29-year-old naval engineer for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. He was a man of science, a man of blueprints and tankers, someone who understood how things were built, not how they were destroyed. He had spent 3 long, grueling months away from his home in Nagasaki. He had been working tirelessly on a new tanker design for the Imperial Navy. This was supposed to be his last day in the city. At 8:15 a.m., the street was beginning to hum with energy. Yamaguchi was walking toward the shipyard for one final check when he heard the faint, high-pitched hum of an engine high above the clouds. He saw a single silver speck, a B-29 bomber known as the Enola Gay, gliding peacefully through the air. In an instant, the sky disintegrated. Yamaguchi described it as a magnesium flare, but 1,000 times more intense. It was a light so blinding and white that it felt like the sun itself had fallen from the heavens. He had only a fraction of a second to react. He dove into a roadside ditch and covered his eyes. Then the vacuum hit. The air was sucked out of the street, followed by a roar that was so loud it didn't feel like a sound, but like a physical blow. The shock wave of the little boy bomb hit him like a solid wall of iron. He felt himself being lifted off the ground, spinning through the air. When he slammed back into the earth and opened his eyes, the clear blue morning was gone. The world had been replaced by a suffocating, charcoal gray twilight. Thick, oily dust and ash hung heavy in the air, blotting out the sun. Yamaguchi tried to move, but his face and arms were badly burned, the skin peeling like paper. Hiroshima had been leveled. In that moment, standing just 3 kilometers from the hypocenter, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was the witness to a new kind of hell.
When Yamaguchi finally managed to push himself up, he didn't recognize the world anymore. The vibrant city of Hiroshima had been replaced by a smoldering graveyard. The air was no longer oxygen, it was a thick, hot soup of ash and pulverized concrete. He began to walk through the haze. He encountered the ant-walking survivors, people who had been so badly burned that they had no faces left, moving in silence toward the river. Yamaguchi followed them. He reached the Ota River, but it was black with soot and choked with debris. Every step was a battle against gravity and shock. He spent a terrifying night in a makeshift shelter with other survivors. The air was filled with the low moans of the dying. But amidst this despair, Yamaguchi's mind remained focused on his wife, Hisako, and their son. He refused to die in the ashes of a city that wasn't his. The next morning, August 7th, he dragged his broken body back toward the railway station. He crossed bridges that were nothing more than skeletal remains, stepping over the carbonized remains of those caught in the open. Miraculously, a single train was still standing at the edge of the ruins. As the train slowly pulled away, he looked out at the rising pillars of black smoke. He thought he was escaping the nightmare. He had no way of knowing he was traveling through the night toward a second appointment with the sun.
By the morning of August 8th, Yamaguchi reached Nagasaki. To his neighbors and friends, he looked like a monster. His skin was blackened, his hair was singed, and he was covered in bandages that leaked fluid and blood. He went straight to his home, where his wife, Hisako, saw him and burst into tears of both terror and relief. She had been told Hiroshima was gone. Seeing him alive felt like a resurrection. Despite his excruciating pain and a fever that was beginning to take hold, Yamaguchi felt a sense of duty. After a restless night, he did the unthinkable. He went to work. On the morning of August 9th, he reported to the Mitsubishi office in Nagasaki. His colleagues gathered around, staring at his bandages in shock. He sat across from his supervisor, a man who had not seen the horror of the new weapon. Yamaguchi tried to explain the scale of the destruction. He described a single bomb that erased a city. His boss grew frustrated and cynical. He laughed and said, "You are an engineer, Tsutomu. Use your logic. How can one bomb destroy a whole city? You've been through a trauma, and your mind is playing tricks on you."
Yamaguchi tried to argue, but he was too weak. As the supervisor continued to lecture him on the impossibility of such a weapon, the clock on the wall hit 11:02 a.m. In that split second, the room was washed in a familiar, terrifying blue-white light. The windows vanished, the walls buckled inward. The sun had found him again. Fat Man, the second atomic bomb, had just detonated over Nagasaki. Yamaguchi hit the floor before the sound even reached his ears. He knew exactly what was happening. The same vacuum, the same heat, the same roar. He lay on the ground, thinking, "The nightmare has followed me." He was once again 3 kilometers from the hypocenter. Because he was inside a reinforced concrete building this time, he wasn't killed instantly, but the blast ripped the skin from his existing burns and filled the air with flying glass and wood. When he crawled out from the debris, Nagasaki was burning. He ran through the chaos toward his home, terrified that his family had been vaporized. He found his house in ruins, but a miracle occurred. His wife and son were in a tunnel-like part of the house when the blast hit,
and they survived with only minor injuries. In the weeks that followed, the true horror of the radiation set in. Yamaguchi's fever spiked to dangerous levels. His hair fell out completely. His wounds refused to heal, and he spent months in a state between life and death. He watched from his sickbed as Japan surrendered, and the world began to realize what had truly happened. He was a survivor of the impossible, but he carried the poison of 2 sons in his blood.
For decades, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a silent survivor. He didn't want to be known as the double-bombed man. He raised his children, worked as a translator, and lived a quiet, humble life. He saw Japan rise from the ashes to become a global power. But as he entered his 80s, the silence became too heavy to bear. He saw the world building more bombs, more powerful than the ones that nearly killed him. He decided to speak. He became a hibakusha, an atomic bomb survivor on a mission. He wrote books, he spoke to the United Nations, and he even met with filmmaker James Cameron to discuss his story. He said, "I have been twice bombed and twice survived. It is my destiny to talk about it." He became a symbol of the ultimate resilience. Tsutomu Yamaguchi lived until the age of 93, passing away in 2010. He outlived the men who dropped the bombs, and he outlived the leaders who started the war. His life proved that while mankind can create the power to destroy cities, it cannot easily destroy the human will to endure. He was a man of 2 cities, 2 bombs, and 1 unbreakable spirit. He was, and will always be, the ultimate defiant soul.